How are you doing? Yes. Where'd you do that one?
Oh, this was great.
The last 6 weeks, I understand that worked out well today. Richard had a little, talk about water. Yeah, but Richard kind of just said hello, this is what we do.
How you doing? Leonard.
I don't want to see you. Please define if I don't. No. I'm just very.
I want to welcome you to our celebration. It sounds like we're going to have some competition from next door, but this group can certainly handle competition. That's the one joke, because that's it. It's great to see everyone here tonight as we roll out the GTA market. I know the demands on your time are great, and one more evening that you're away from your families, but I'm sure you're going to find it well worth it. We're privileged tonight to have some of the support team from corporate office. I want to introduce them to you. Ron Collins, Greg McDonald, Leanne Serson. Is Heather here? Trish Scott and Mary. Before we get on with the festivities, I also want to thank, special thanks to Bob Amos, Stephanie May and Mary for the preparations of putting together this evening's place and the ambiance. Thank you.
Can people hear, or is it just too loud in here with a microphone?
With that little fan that just went on,
What is that?
air conditioning.
I can hear you.
The bingo thing down.
Bingo thing there. I'll try this. Okay, what do you got it to?
So
I got a little work, actually.
I got a little worried when I walked in here because I see all these cameras. And I see, so I think Richard karaoke, so no. This is, and I'm a little punchy anyway because Greg and I are in Halifax yesterday for rollouts and a presentation last night to the people in Nova Scotia. And McDonald tricked me because he said, well, we'll catch the 6 o'clock flight back to Toronto on Wednesday morning. He said there's an hour time change, so it won't be much of a problem. The difficulty is it's going the wrong way. So at 3 o'clock Toronto time, someone rang me in my room and I had to get up and get on a plane. Different plane than McDonald's, thank goodness. For those of you who don't know me, and I see a lot of faces in the room, it's great to see people, great to be back home. For those who don't know me, I'm Ron Collins. And I came out of Ontario, and in '96 I had an opportunity with the group to go to Cincinnati to work in operations due diligence. And so I left the Ontario region. Greg came in and looked after Eastern Canada. And now after 5 years, 7 months, 3 days, I've been repatriated back home. Comes with somewhat of a bittersweet sense to it, of course, because at the same time that I was asked to come back to Canada, my good friend Harry Rath retired. And I know Harry was a very good friend to many of you people in the room. He was a mentor to many of us, and so it was bittersweet to come back, but it's nice to be home. It's great to be working with you people back here in the GTA area. When I left, it was Toronto. I came back, now it's called the GTA, so I'm not sure exactly what that means. But I think the most important message, I have a short presentation, I'm going to keep it short. The most important message that I have for everyone in this room tonight is thank you. From my heart and from our senior executive, thank you for hanging in. Thank you for continuing to be focused on the families that you're privileged to serve, that we're privileged to serve. That's what this business is about. I lose sight of it, quite frankly, from time to time, and have to be brought back around to the fact that we help people say goodbye, because I'm caught up in the corporate numbers and HR policies and latest estimates and budgets and things like that. So, such is corporate life. But sincerely, I want to thank everyone. It's been an interesting ride for some of us old-timers and even some of you newcomers. I joined the group in '87, Richard '86. We've seen a lot of water under the bridge. Some of it's been an odd color, but here we are, and we're going to put things back on track. So I really do want to thank you. What I want to do also is give you a bit of an overview of where we are as a company, as a corporation, how we got to where we are. And in order to do that, I really have to, and I got my technician here, he can't get his remote control working, so Greg's going to push buttons if he can get it working for me here. But what I want to do is just take you back, rewind the clock about 18 months. I can rewind it even further to June 1st, 1999, when we filed for CCAA in Chapter 11. I won't go back that far to that painful moment. But what we did is we went back in the year 2000, primarily in the U.S., we had a look at the company overall and tried to determine how we got into the trouble we got into. And I'm going to show you a couple slides here really quickly that will make it very, very clear. But once we filed for CCAA Chapter 11, we started a review process, and what we found that not only Lowen, for obvious reasons, but the entire funeral service industry was under pressure. It wasn't just Lowen. We were the ones that filed for Chapter 11 that decided that we needed to take our medicine and restructure, but the entire industry was under pressure. And we also determined that while the core businesses were stable, the cash being generated from the core business was not satisfactory. It was unacceptable, given our debt load primarily. The status quo was unacceptable, and the good news was that what we found was that the field itself was very impatient to change. People throughout the company had sat there and realized and could see some of the crazy things that we did as a corporation. Crazy things like every Saturday there'd be a phone call and you put your prices up $300. Crazy things like acquisition programs that essentially, I mean, I'm embarrassed because I went down to do operations due diligence. It became a negotiation of what the bank return on investment was going to be on the letter of credit. We were always going to buy whatever we were looking at. So there was no, operations due diligence that where you'd come out of it and say, hey, I don't think we should buy that. You could say that until you're blue in the face, but we bought it. And so we bought a lot of properties, and we bought them at a very high premium, as did the competition. But what we found was the field, people in the field were sitting back and saying, well, we understand. Why don't these guys in corporate office get it? Okay. We took an assessment of the organization, and we found that, obviously our strengths are the people in the room here, people that we had in the room last night in Halifax, and we'll have in Regina and Winnipeg and Edmonton next week. People in the Northeast USA that I also have responsibility for. That's our greatest asset. Obviously, in the service sector, that's going to be. We also have some valuable assets, the bricks and mortar, the Oshawa Funeral Homes, the Trull Funeral Service, Snows in Halifax, great assets. We also had some bad assets, and we've had to deal with that over the last year and a half. Weaknesses, the organization itself, and not the organization so much in the field, but the organization corporately, and how dysfunctional it grew as a result of the high rate of acquisition. Lack of focus, and again, not lack of focus so much in the field, because you people, thank goodness, remain focused on serving your families, but the lack of focus at the corporate level, and also the lack of information and processes. And that is, quite frankly, a challenge that continues. To this day, Trish will contest to this, to this day, that continues to be a challenge. It will be a challenge over the coming months, if not the coming year, as we try to wrestle all these spaghetti systems that we have and get the data massaged into a system that actually provides us with information that we can use to help us in the field. When we analyze what our business is, the bondholders, the creditors, the people on Bay Street and Wall Street would call our business specialized retail. And we shouldn't take offense at that, because many of us over, specialized retail, what does that mean? What does specialized retail mean? It's just a category that we're placed in, because it's a different sort of retail business that we're in. We're very service oriented. We're very labor intense. We have significant fixed costs with our facilities and our fleets and our staff. While we deal with a difficult time for the family, it's a relatively, and this is not to demean the process at all, it's a relatively simple process in the sense that we're not doing 150 transactions a week. It's one transaction, it's two transactions, it's 150 transactions a year, it's 300 transactions a year, and that's what's meant by that. Not in any way is it intended to say it's a simple process, because we all know in the room it's not a simple process. And a great challenge that we had and continue to have, quite frankly, is that we had 1,500 decentralized locations. We now have about 1,100 decentralized locations, and the challenge of trying to manage that many decentralized locations, with the history of the location being, if you think about it, we had essentially 1,500 entrepreneurs, because we acquired these funeral homes and these cemeteries. We didn't acquire them from other corporations. We acquired them from individuals, from entrepreneurs, from people who their families were in the business, or they had started the business, and then we came in and acquired them. So you start to deal with 1,500 decentralized locations over North America, and thank goodness there's that entrepreneurial spark in each of those locations. It doesn't always jive quickly with the corporate mentality, quite frankly. This is, I call this my spaghetti flowchart. This really, I know people can't read the numbers. Don't try and read the numbers. I'll just give you an idea of what this is all about. But these numbers are based on 1999 operating results. And if you took a look at what we did, we talked about the organization being a challenge. If you take a look at where we were back then, we have 4 silos of management, of overhead. And this is primarily in the US, where 92–93% of our revenues are generated. But you would have the funeral home operations, vice president of funeral home operations. You'd have a vice president of funeral home advanced planning. You'd have a vice president of cemetery operations. You'd have a vice president of cemetery pre-need sales. And we even had a vice president who didn't even make the chart. We had so many of them. We even had a vice president of combos in the US. So if we had a cemetery funeral home combination, we had a vice president for that as well. He had the best job because we didn't have that many vice presidents, or that many combos, right? But what I want to point out here is that our structure was so top heavy that on a given day, you could literally have 5 vice presidents in the Seattle airport all going to the same combination funeral home cemetery to manage it. 5 corporate vice presidents. And of course, each of those 5 corporate vice presidents had his divisional vice presidents and his divisional regional managers, and all of that fat above the line where the revenue is actually generated, where the families are served. And so, and the other thing that happened here was, of course, then you had up the middle, which was the big G&A number here as well. But what happened is he had all these different agendas. I mean, the cemetery sales guy would be fighting with the cemetery operations guy, and the pre-need guy, the advanced planning guy, he's arguing with the funeral home at-need guy, and there was nobody to referee them because they all went up, 4 or 5 different silos, and they all had their own objectives, and they all had their own agendas, and they were in conflict, quite frankly. If you take a look at the numbers here, in the U.S. in 1999, funeral home operations generated $188 million in cash flow, U.S. dollars. If you run across and to the other side, you see a negative number there, the cash outflow, cash out of the bank because of our selling practices. And this is not to beat up salespeople in any way. We gave these people the rules, and they went out and sold because they were told they needed to sell, to inflate our revenue numbers because of accounting principles that were acceptable at the time. And so our selling practices, our sales guidelines, our commission guidelines, primarily around cemetery sales, actually cost us $85 million in 1999 just to run the program out of the bank. And then you come up the middle with this other layer of G&A, Vancouver, Cincinnati. I mean, we had at one point in time, I think we had about 13 different support offices throughout the US. And that cost us another $88 million to run. And that's not even counting raised jet. When you take a look, which I think he leased back to the company when we needed it or something. Anyway, I digress. If you take a look at $188 million in cash flow from operations, and you take away $88 million in corporate G&A and $85 million that went out the door because of our silly selling practices, we ended up with $15 million US at the end of the day, and we had $2.3 billion in debt. So when I first saw that diagram, I finally got it and realized why on June 1st, 99, we had to file CCAA Chapter 11. When we did that, we went into a process of reorganization, and we took a look at the status quo, and we worked up, a situation analysis, and we took a look at objectives for the company, and we ended up with a number of areas that we had to focus on very, very quickly. One over here was restructure pre-need, and in the U.S. we did that April 17th of 2000, and we actually took the $85 million negative cash flow and turned it around to cash flow neutral and positive with our new sales guidelines. We lost a lot of sales as a result of that, and one of our emergence plans, one of our priorities is the revitalization of sales, but the revitalization of good sales. Not sales that cost us money, but sales that are actually additive to the company. We took a look at re-engineering the administration of all the home offices and all the different support centers. And that's why today we have the Burnaby Support Center, we have the Toronto Support Center, and we have the Cincinnati Support Center. Philadelphia is gone, New Orleans is gone, Conroe, Texas is gone. These are tough decisions that you make in restructuring, but they're decisions that are absolutely necessary to streamline the G&A and reduce the cash outflow. So that's happened. That re-engineering continues to happen today, and it's going to continue to happen over the next 12 to 18 months in terms of administrative re-engineering, just because of the magnitude of it. At one time, I was told, we had 18 different computer servers in Vancouver. That's right, 18 I think they said? We're now down to 1. So I mean, we're getting our house in order. That takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight. We had to rationalize assets, primarily in the U.S., a few in Canada, excuse me, primarily in the U.S., 371 funeral homes and cemeteries that were non-strategic to the ongoing operations and the success of the company. And those were tough decisions. I mean, you're sitting down, you're looking at a list of funeral homes, you know the people, you know the locations, they're not adding value, and you have to make the tough call. You have to take your medicine. And we're almost complete in terms of that process. We have 2 major sales that still have to be completed. Hawaii, which a lot of people didn't want to sell for obvious reasons. Well, mainly the people that were managing it, who got to go there. and State of Michigan cemeteries. We did crazy things. State of Michigan cemeteries, no combo law. We set up the cemeteries as a separate company and put it into trust with someone who was a lawyer with our company, who no longer is a lawyer with our company, because we needed to be trying to be in the cemetery business and the funeral business at the same time against the spirit of a state law, and all it did was come back and bite us in the butt. So, we needed to rationalize the assets. We've done that largely as part of the business plans. We continue to look at assets all the time in terms of their best value, no doubt about that. We had to look at a franchised model for operations, and that became part of the field reorg. The field reorganization itself, those 4 silos, 5 silos, they were eliminated down to 1 silo. There is just one reporting structure in operations now throughout North America. And that is, you have a GVP. The GVP has a support team, thank God. And they have regional managers, and we have market general managers and market sales managers. But all of the entire integration of services is within that one structure. There is one agenda, there is one budget, there is one objective, and that's to serve our families as best we can. And so now, at the end of the day, you have one person in a region, one person in a market they're accountable for that. You don't have someone over on this side, saying we need to do this, we need to do this, and someone over here, no, we need to do that, because it's agreed upon and we move forward as a team. So it's the way that we have to move. As part of that, the franchise model really is the market model, and that's what Richard's going to talk to you about in a little bit. And that's not to frighten people. It's not a Montana's or a Tim Hortons donut we're talking about here. We're talking about having an umbrella infrastructure that we use as a model. And then within the model of that structure, we recognize that each and every market is different. Toronto is different than Halifax. Halifax is certainly different from Charlotte. Charlotte is certainly different from Vancouver. And so we provide a structure that we operate within, and we don't move away from that, but we understand that within that structure, there's going to be differences. There's going to be a 76% cremation rate in Vancouver. There's going to be a 6% cremation rate in Charlotte, North Carolina. So you have those differences, and that's what it recognizes. So as part of that whole market plan, we develop a platform for future growth, and we move forward as a company. So the 5 critical issues back in 2000, dysfunctional management structure, we've talked about the silos, uneconomic pre-need selling practices, we've talked about the $85 million, inefficient home office administration, we've talked about re-engineering, how that's going to continue, no geographic rationale for many locations. I had a location in Cumberland, Maryland, 185 miles from any other loan location. Beautiful little town, Cumberland. We had a manager there, and the place did about 45 calls a year maybe. He called us up one day and said, I've been working so hard, I've decided to take a job at the local jail. So now what do you do with a location 185? Well, we closed it up is what we did with it. We're selling it for real estate. But I mean, that's how silly some of these things were in terms of how out of the ballpark they were. If it moved, we bought it. No platform for future growth. We now have that platform through the market plans. We rolled out 32 markets in Northeast USA a year ago, and now we're in the process of rolling out the markets in Canada. This is simply, very quickly, this is what the structure looks like now. Where you saw the silos before, now it's a very flat structure. We've cut a lot of the fat out of it. Had a lot of surplus vehicles around for a little while. We got rid of most of them now. But that's what we had to do, was to get it flat. So the market model really is one of single focus on customers. I'm sorry, I'm standing here in front of you people and you can't see it. Sorry, Nancy. Single focus on customer service, operational excellence. I mean, that's really what it's all about. As we move back to focus on our customers, we had a huge debate actually about a year ago now, about what our company was. Whether we're a service company, whether we're an operations company, whether we're a products company. And a products company is someone like Procter & Gamble. Every other week they've got a new tube of Crest toothpaste out in front of you that's got something else in it that's different that you need to buy it. An operational company is like FedEx. You do everything exactly by the book. This is the FedEx Bible, don't do it any other way. We can track everything, it's very, very efficient. And you have service industry, which is what we are. We're a service company, but we're a service company that has to strive for operational excellence in order to deliver those goods. Obviously, we need to increase revenue initiatives. We need to provide greater information, greater choice, new service, merchandise concepts. We need to be ahead of the wave in terms of funeral service. We need to reduce operating costs wherever we can. The hard, cold fact of restructuring is that you need to identify and eliminate what we call non-additive expense. That means all those vice presidents that really weren't needed, you need to eliminate it, quite frankly, to be able to survive as a company. And we need to identify opportunity, and that's where the fund comes in, because there is a great deal of opportunity in funeral service throughout North America. That essentially speaks to assessing and redeploying assets, having a look at all the funeral homes and the cemeteries that were non-strategic, selling them, taking that cash, using it for other things. You get into situations that you're reviewing. For example, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, we have a historic funeral home in downtown Harrisburg, serves the Jewish community and does a great job of it, but the Jewish community has moved out to the suburbs, so the neighborhood has changed. The decision has been made that we will sell the bricks and mortar of the Reese Funeral Home. We will take that cash. We will then redeploy that cash with a new facility up to standard, OSHA, WMIS, ADA, everything up to snuff, where our market is to better serve that market. Those are the types of things. So when I start to talk about asset rationalization and strategic market growth, don't get frightened by that. In our experience in the U.S., in many, many cases, the majority of situations, we've taken our good people and moved them to other locations if we've shut a location down, or we've closed a location and redeployed the cash somewhere else for a new location. So it's not something to be frightened of. Business plan implementation, really key components, people. All of us in the room, you people in the room. The markets themselves, we have to develop the markets, we have to look at opportunities within the market, the process of that. Richard and the other MGMs in Canada have been through a rigorous process over the last couple of months of business plans, and they've had meetings with location managers, and they've sat down and said, what can we do to do it better? And of course the team, putting all that together and creating a team. And I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. The Canadian team is now in place and we're in, and we plan to deliver. There has been talk that the market plan doesn't make sense, and I'm here to tell you it does, and we move forward. This is what we call Project Phoenix, to be the industry leader and an excellent operating company by January 1st, 2003. Now you notice that's 2003. In legacy loan, we would have said, okay, to be the industry leader and an excellent operating company by June 1st, 2001, and I'd be standing here in October. I mean, we understand now that this is an evolution, this is a process, this is not an event that just happens. A little bit of a sidebar on the Project Phoenix. Paul has a winter home in Phoenix, and if it doesn't work out, then he's going to be spending a lot of time there, so he really wants us to work out. 5 key strategies as we move forward. Grow same-store sales by providing the best overall value and seamless service. Grow pre-need sales by providing peace of mind for families. Maximize the economic advantages of being a consolidator. Improve the quality and management of our assets. Develop a performance-based culture. Those are really, where we are. We've developed a vision as a company using imagination and leadership to exceed customer expectations. We've developed a mission statement. We will create value for families, employees, and shareholders by being the superior provider of seamless funeral service. We will attract outstanding people and nurture their development. Hey, there's a concept. Why don't we train some people? Why don't we help them out? Why don't we help them develop? We will be the leader in the communities where we operate. We don't want to be in a market if we're not the leader in the market. And that's not to be nasty and say we're going to put everybody else out of business, but we want to dominate the markets. We want to be the leaders. What's the sense of getting out of bed in the morning if you're just going to strive for mediocrity? Our values: integrity, teamwork, communication, compassion, and creativity. You're going to see a lot more of that as the emergence plan starts to come out and as we start to talk about our vision and our mission and our values. Will Rogers, I guess it's cut off there, it looks like Will Raj. Will Rogers said, "You can be on the right track, but if you sit still, you can get run over." And that's the case in any business today, in 2001 going into 2002. When the rate of external change is greater than the rate of internal change in an organization, disaster is imminent. And our challenge is to look for opportunities and stay ahead of that wave of change and provide what families need and want. In order to be successful, we need to develop the uncanny ability to cut through clutter, industry noise. I think most people in the room know that this last month at Canadian Funeral Director, there was a one-page ad that came out, send in your $500 or $200 or 2% of your gross sales from last year, whatever, into some kitty, and we're all going to buy our lone funeral homes back. That was run in the Canadian Funeral Director, it was run in the American Funeral Director, and I got news for everybody, it ain't going to happen. We got into a big discussion in Halifax with the poor people down in Nova Scotia because they're all upset about this. It's been put in by a group that have absolutely no standing in the bankruptcy courts of Delaware or of Canada. So you've got to stay away from all that industry clutter. I mean, quite frankly, I don't care what happens in the industry. I'll watch the competition, we'll watch the competition, we'll see what's going on, but what we need to focus on is not the competition, but our families and what they want and how we can provide better service to them and serve their needs. Everything else will look after itself. So we really have to lose that industry noise. We also have to stop replicating sameness. We have to start to think of ways to be different, to provide better services to people, new services to people. We have to seize the essence of what needs to be done, prioritize, be proactive, move forward. We need to work together, obviously, to get it done. We need to be accountable to one another, and we need to be consistent. Standard operating procedures, consistency in our way of thinking. So we're into change, obviously. Big changes, so many changes that probably in the last 2.5, and I was involved for 6 months before filing, so almost 3 years. So many changes I'm numb from them, quite frankly. It's always uncomfortable because you never know what's coming next. There's some morbid excitement to it perhaps, but there's no doubt about it. Change is uncomfortable because you don't know. And so you move into this anticipation, a state of anticipation, and then you come to grips with reality. I came to grips with reality finally, I think about 3 months after we filed Chapter 11, or CCAA, when I finally came to grips, we're in Chapter 11, so I guess that's reality, so it's time to get off your duff and move forward. It starts to sink in, and just when it starts to sink in, you've got so many things coming at you, so many changes, so many uncertainties, that you go into the dumps. And then you work your way out. I call it the pit of chaos. You start to get it again, and then all of a sudden, you climb out of that pit of chaos, and you look back and you say, how did we ever do it? How did we ever exist the way we existed before? How did we ever get up and go to work and live our lives when the things that were going on around us were going on around us? When we knew that we were putting up our prices $475 across the board. When we knew that we were on a road to disaster. So that's what I asked myself. Say, Collins, how did you do that before? Because things are so much different now. So how do we practice together? Have respect for one another. That's the biggie. Be frank, be open, make joint decisions wherever possible. Challenge each other in a good, objective, positive way. Build a foundation of mutual trust, create the team. Be accountable and lead by example. Keep people focused on the initiatives. This slide's going to keep going, but that's fine. This is really important to me because we joined the Loan Group in 1987, and I get this feeling that, this is about me and this is about my past, and you have to get beyond all that history. You have to say, it's not about the past, it's about the future. It's not about the issue, it's more about the issue at this point in time and how you move forward. I said earlier that, for almost 18 months I was a director of operations due diligence, which means, for those of you who don't know what that means, is that I would go out after corporate development, entered into an agreement to purchase a funeral home, and do a review of that funeral home and come back and say, yes, it's going to fly. Well, after 18 months of beating your head against the wall, you get a little sensitive when you're, a few years later, you're selling all the funeral homes you worked in the due diligence on. So you have to keep the old bones buried. You have to forget about those times. Don't make excuses of past problems as why things can't be done today. You just have to make them change. You have to understand your role and face the challenges and realize that you can make a difference. Everybody can make a difference. History is good. It teaches us how to be better, but we can't dwell on it. It's history. We have to be true to the decisions we make as a team. We may have to make sure that everyone understands what their role is, and we all have very different roles. We have to hold team members accountable. We have to realize that there's no I in team, that it's a team, it's a group effort. And the team is only good as its weakest link. So we have to help. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that if we identify that we have a weakest link, we throw it out with the dishwater. We train the weakest link, we inspire the weakest link, we work with the weakest link to develop that individual to her or his fullest potential. We have to nurture an environment that is always open to continuous improvement, motivate out-of-the-box thinking. This is important. Reward even those experiments that don't work. It's okay to fail. If we don't fail, and I know this from experience, if we don't fail, we're really not trying. If we don't go out on a limb and say, I think this will work, and make a recommendation, move it forward, and if we're not prepared to get egg in our face if it doesn't work after trying and trying and trying, that's okay. It's okay to fail. Power of 1,100 locations is a number of possible outcomes. One of the great challenges we have as an organization is to take all of the knowledge, all of the standard operating procedures, all of the best practices, all of the ideas, all those service initiatives, and get it into one place, like a giant buffet, where people can then come to the buffet and pick out what they need to make their operations better and serve their families better. And it's incredible when you think of the benefit of being a consolidator, because we have the opportunity and we've yet to harness that potential, the potential of having all of the ideas, how they do things in Seattle, Washington, how they do things in Brooklyn, New York, how they do things in Peterborough, Ontario, and actually get it on the table so it's shared by everyone and used by everyone. And that's what, it's a big issue that we're working on. We have to dare to be different than the guy down the street. We have to think out of the box. Biggie, I don't know how many times over the last 2 years I've heard this. We've always done it this way. We've always done it this way. We've always done it this way. Well, damn it, we must be doing something wrong, or over our long history of funeral service, something went wrong. Because if we've always done it this way, why is funeral service where it is today? We got to move forward. Got to keep on the road we've paved. There's a danger that just it's a natural instinct. You want to start to mess with stuff that really isn't within your bailiwick, within your roles and responsibilities. I want to start to play with with general ledgers until Trish tells me to stop and leave the numbers alone, let her deal with it. Or I want to go out and look for a new car for a funeral home because it's always fun to look for a new car. Well, that's not my job to look for new cars. And so you really have to keep within roles and responsibilities and make sure that you're not in areas where, not in a purposeful way, but where you're just not adding value to the organization. We have to give options and suggestions in a structured environment. There's no sense sitting down, having a staff meeting, and having it just blow apart, and everyone's all upset, and people are yelling and screaming. We're all big boys and girls now. And we need to be able to sit in a room and discuss things openly and frankly and not take things personally and not present things personally. We need to offer turnkey solutions. I put turnkey there because what that means is if we have a better way of doing something, we need to package that. We have a responsibility to package that and give that to other operations, other people on our own staff, and say, here's how, here's the complete package. If I had a dime for every idea someone called me about, it would be great. But if I had a penny for every time someone actually gave me the entire solution, it'd be wonderful. And that's really all that means. And what we need to do is develop as a company these turnkey solutions. So, conceptually you're able to go to a website of corporate knowledge and say, I'm having trouble with accounts receivable, or I'm having trouble with wrongful burial, or I'm having trouble with cremains, and go to that index and have a menu of best practices and standard operating procedures that you can then take back as needed and apply to your own operations. And as a result, provide better service to your families, more consistent service to your families. It's our role to ensure the path to the road is always easy to see and clear of obstacles. That's what we have to be as leaders. That's the challenge that you have to put back to myself, Greg, Trish, Leanne, Richard, Eric, anybody who is in a leadership role at a corporate level. That's our job, is to clear the roadblocks for you people to serve your families. Have to have the courage to make tough decisions. I've talked about a few tough decisions we've made. You have to do what is right for the business. Otherwise, there won't be a business. Can't jeopardize the majority for the benefit of a few. Simply put, no special deals. It's a new company. We don't have special deals anymore. They're all gone. Be proactive. In 2 days, tomorrow will be yesterday. And remember that the best way to predict the future is to create it. Over to Richard. I think it's over to Richard. Last time I said over to Graham, it's the best laugh I got all night. Everyone started laughing. I said over to Graham. So.
There will be an opportunity later on to ask questions of Ron, or Greg, or Leanne, or Trish, or Heather.
Oh, Heather's here. I'm sorry, you are here. Hot and traffic. Okay, thanks very much. Here's Greg.
Forget it, Rick. I'm like Ron, I'm not fond of microphones and large groups of people. Compared to last night, we had 45, which was nice and cozy, but this looks like a pretty strong team. Richard has me down here for, what is it, Rick? Initial information. I think he's got it backwards. He's going to give you the initial information. I just want to share what happened to me this morning. Is anybody familiar with the Energizer Bunny? Well, that commercial is totally false. I arrived at the Halifax airport this morning, loaded with a bag of equipment that I could have flew the plane. I found out the hard way. Turn on your computer. I did that well. Let me put your bag through the X-ray machine. Can we see in your bag? Absolutely. So they had a table that went from about, from here to Michelle. Of course, all my goodies are on it. There was a data bank. Thank heavens the battery worked. There was a calculator, and there was a camera. I think that was about it. So she said, turn on your calculator. And lo and behold, my calculator didn't work. The batteries are dead. So she provided me with batteries. And I proved to her that the calculator worked. Do I look like a security risk? So then, thanks, Josh. I'll get to you in a minute. So then she said, turn on your digital camera, which is identical to this one here. Now just imagine, I'm in security, okay? My bag is checked. And lo and behold, I shipped the camera to Northwestern Ontario for Brad to take some pictures for our digital library that we're putting together. And I went to turn the camera on, and it didn't work. The batteries were dead. So she said, I can provide you with batteries. I put in her batteries, but they weren't strong enough to drive the camera. And guess what? I was at a loss. She She said, you're going to have to take the camera and check it in. I said, oh, okay. How do I do that? Well, she said, just go back to the gate. I said, but it's 10 to 6 and my plane leaves at 6:15. So that's okay, we'll hold your bag. She said, I can't let you go. So I got on a marathon run for my car to put the camera in the trunk. So I'm looking for sympathy, and I called my wife this evening on the way out here, and I shared the events of the day. And she says, well, it sounds like you don't have to walk this evening, you already got your exercise. Then I arrive at the office, and who's greeting me but Trish to go crunch numbers all day with itchy eyes and a room that had dim lights, so it's been a long day. The concerted effort all of you have made to be here this evening is evident of your true commitment and dedication. And that's what you do best. You're totally committed. Is our strength in our physical structures? I don't believe so. I believe it's in our people and our leadership. As Ron had alluded to people, I'm a firm believer that our people are our best product. And I guess I can stand up here and take responsibility for the marketing of that, and I don't think I've probably done the best job. And I think we have to do that a lot better, because I think we've got great people in this room. We've got a great team. And we're going to make it happen. We're going to be the leaders in all of our communities. And that's going to take change. And I've struggled with change, definitely. Last August, I believe, we were summoned to Winnipeg for a meeting with some of the corporate people as to what the plan was for Canada going forward. And I'll be honest, I came back with some reservations. I didn't know what to expect. And I thought, well, I knew Ron from the past in Canada. I thought I'd give him a call to see how it's all working in the US. And he was quick to observe a problem. And he said, you know what? He said, I'll shoot this document off to you. And just take a look at it. His observation was that I was resisting to some change. And change is that foreign element, be it good or bad. And there's the denial, there's going to be your resistance, there's going to be definitely the chaos, and then there's going to be the implementation of the change to the new status quo. I know some of you may not have heard, but status quo is not acceptable. Paul Houston's got the neatest definition, the definition of insanity, not to change and expect different results. I said to somebody in the crowd last night with us in Halifax, he referees football, and I said, you know what it's like when you blow the whistle and you shouldn't have. You gotta proceed. We're going to make some changes that aren't going to be accepted right away. The changes we will make won't be a detriment to the asset, won't be a detriment to the families that you serve. But we need your cooperation and we need your help. And you people are the front line. There's been a lot of time and hard work put into the business planning initiatives from Richard and Eric. We still have a lot to learn, and you're going to help us through that curve. We're going to listen. We're going to listen a little better to all of you people, because you're on the front line with the consumer, the customer, our family. And they are king, and they tell us right or different. So I'm not going to belabor here any longer. I know Richard's getting anxious. He's been playing with his microphone since I arrived this evening. And I know he really wants to get in front of all of you and share some of the great experiences that we've taken him up to this point in time. Some of them have been roller coastery, and that's getting into the word change. So, Rick, I'll turn it over to you, and are you all hooked up here?
No.
How come?
That is the next step. You're my helper. Actually, we're going to have the history of the funeral homes, and we're going to start from your left to right. So we're going to start with Oshawa Funeral Service, which is under the bridal arbor in the far corner. So is ever doing the history for Oshawa? After Oshawa will be Del Moro, and Comstocks, give him Max Scarborough. Charles Young Street, Charles Danforth, and give him Max Danforth.
Thank you, but don't go away, Richard. I must apologize for the noise next door. Apparently it's a party for one person who has a birthday today, our market general manager, Richard. It's his birthday today, so all the karaoke singers, would you get ready? And we're gonna sing Richard, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Richard. Happy birthday to you. Thank you. Stand here.
Yep.
Hi, my name's Bob. That wasn't loud enough. Now everybody's supposed to say hi, Bob. Hi, my name's Bob. Hi, Bob. Thank you. We practiced that every coffee break for the last 3 weeks, and they let me down at the back. Oshawa Funeral Service is just a little over 4 years old. It's not a very long time, but it's long enough to have a little bit of history. And on May 1st, 1997, Guy and Stephanie and I walked into a brand new building. We didn't have any carpet, we didn't have any fixtures, we didn't have a computer, no furniture, not even a pencil. But in a month and a half, it was June 21st, 97, we were a fully functional funeral home. We were ready for our open house, and we even had a staff, although most of them were part-time. But we were open for business, and as you can imagine, it was a very exciting time for us. It had just been 2 years in the planning and construction. And although Guy, working with Richard at Trulls, had told the loan group that the time was right to build in Oshawa, and they did listen, we could not have accomplished what we did without the support, the interest, and the enthusiasm of Mr. Harry Rath and Mr. Ron Collins and Mr. Greg McDonald. And along the way, many of you seated here tonight have given us immeasurable help. As I mentioned, we didn't have a staff, so transfers and embalmings had to be done. And vehicles had been supplied when we had funerals, and we were fortunate to have a few. Until the day that we finally got our own vehicles from Paperman's, and that's another story, isn't it? And then we didn't have any drivers, so we had to ask Trulls and Giffens for the drivers, and they came through for us. So we're really grateful to the managers and the staff of the funeral homes in the GTA for helping make Oshawa a success. And I remember a guy on the telephone, and I always used to think he was having his confession with Richard. He was, of course, Guy's quite a talker, and he was getting advice from Richard, I think. And then he'd be talking to Brian and borrowing things. And Brian, I'm sorry, we haven't returned many of those things that we borrowed, especially the candy, and possession's 9/10 of the law. Come out someday. Some of you have heard this story maybe, but I'd like to tell the one about the first day after our open house. I was watching the office. Guy and Stephanie were cutting their grass, and we got 2 calls right in about 5 minutes, and I was there all alone. So I called them frantically, and they rushed down, and Steph looked after the office, and Guy and I made the removals, and then we did the arranging, and then we did the embalming. And that leads into another little story. Guy had a lovely new white lab coat for himself, but I hadn't embalmed in about 15 years, so he didn't think I needed one. So I ended up putting holes in a garbage bag, and that kept my shirt clean. Yeah, we didn't even think, in all our preparation for opening a funeral home, to have any arrangement folders. We had to bum some from Richard. And we did fly by the seat of our pants, and if you know Guy, he's great at it. He always gets a smooth landing. And the main thing was we had fun as we went along. And even on house removals at 3 a.m. we had fun, or I did anyway, because we always seemed to get one in the east end of Oshawa. We drove past our two competitors and honked the horn at 3 a.m. as we drove by. We went to this one family one night and got there and sort of got a little bit of a letdown because they wanted to go to the Simple alternative. And Simple wouldn't come out for removal at 3 a.m. in the morning, just Oshawa Funeral Service would. So anyway, we told them we'd take the remains to the funeral home and they could call Simple in the morning and come out and get it. So the people were so impressed with us. A gentleman from Toronto had died. He had his funeral in Oshawa with us. He didn't go to Simple. So we were pretty pleased about that. In 4.5 years, our little staff has grown, and so has our business. And even as the pressures of new funeral homes, cemetery combos are on the horizon, the future still looks bright for us. Our first year, we thought we could serve about 75 families, and Harry and Greg kept putting more furniture and improvements in the building, so we're budgeted for about 127. I think in the first 6 months we did 150, which was really remarkable for us and an exciting time. And this year, in our 4.5 years, it looks like we'll be just under the 500 mark, about 480. So it's going pretty good. I don't know, we're into exciting times with Richard's rollout. I know we're all working hard. I know the other GTA funeral homes have young, strong, exciting staffs, and we do too in Oshawa, and we're trying to build a new tradition of funeral service. And because of our staff and with all of your help, we've been successful. But funeral service isn't the same as when I graduated. Somebody asked me when I graduated at dinner tonight, and it was 1968. And that was the last class of the old Canadian School of Embalming. Nobody's ever heard of that. They're all Humber graduates here now, so I guess I'm feeling pretty old, but it's a different climate. You have to fight for every call you get today. And but hard work will pay off, and if we serve the families properly, they'll come back. And the one thing that I think that we try to do with our young staff is make every family feel special. And if we make them feel special, then they think that our funeral home is special, and they'll come back to us. They won't go to our competitor down the street. So at Oshawa, our hats are off to all of you, our affiliates, who have long histories of great service and dedication in your communities, and thank you for assisting us in our startup. And we hope that in time our history will be as rich as yours. Thank you. Bob spelled the same forwards and backwards.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of all of the Dalmoro Funeral Home staff and myself, Luigi Vescio, we appreciate and are very grateful for being part of a revived corporation, soon to be known as the Alderwood Group. Dalmoro Funeral Home Woodbridge Chapel was established by Lino Tam DeMarco in March of 1992. The spacious 21,000 square foot building was built to cater to the Italian Roman Catholic community of Vaughan and surrounding community. The facility offers 4 visitation rooms, a very large parking lot, reception facility, and a full-size lounge area. In July of 1993, Dalmoro Funeral Home Woodbridge Chapel was transferred to the joint ownership of the Loewen Group, Inc., a group of local Italian prominent businessmen and myself. Between the years of 1993 to 1995, this team of ownership decided to proceed with the establishment of a second location in a North York community, and succeeded in opening Dalmoro Funeral Home North York Chapel in the month of July of 1995. Dalmoro Funeral Home North York Chapel was constructed very similar to our Woodbridge Chapel. The facility is 17,000 square feet and offers our families the choice of 4 visitation rooms, a medium-sized lounge, a large parking lot again, and a warm decor of fine finishings. Both of our chapels are recognized as a single functioning unit within our community. Our staff is pooled between both chapels, along with our administrative assembly and professional vehicles. In 1997, Delmoro Funeral Homes Limited, Woodbridge, and North York chapels were both transferred to the sole ownership of the Lowen Group, Inc. Along with myself, our operations manager, Kevin Dodlin, our bookkeeper, Sonia Kempitelli, our 5 licensed funeral directors, Ken Burnley, Andrew Borsier, Stephen Pierce, Anita Manson, and Nick Vesho, our apprentice, Susanna Moreno, and our general duty staff. You know who you are, and so do I, and everybody here. And of course, all of you here this evening. We face many new challenges in the new years to come, and look forward in the joining of a strong team effort to lead our industry by example. Thank you and good night.
Comstocks from Peterborough.
Good evening, I'm Carl Brown and I'm representing Comstocks here tonight. I had a chat with Bob there before we started and Guy, and they said they were a little less on tradition, so we go back to about 1830, so they offered me up some of their time. We didn't want to go year by year, so I've broken it down into 10-year blocks here, and we'll just make our way through. Comstock Funeral Home can be traced back as far as the 1830s when Colonel Thomas Poole, a medical doctor, opened the Poole Funeral Home and Furniture Store located on Brock Street in Peterborough. It was at this time that Aaron Comstock left his home in Brighton and joined Colonel Poole as his apprentice in cabinet making. It was here that Aaron was called upon to make coffins for funerals and became interested in funeral service itself. In 1853, Aaron, who was in his early 30s at the time, purchased the Poole business, relocated it to Sherbrooke Street in central Peterborough, and renamed it the A. Comstock Funeral Home and Furniture Store. From then on, the funeral home located 3 more times, twice due to devastating fires, and the last time due to a restriction of space for a rapidly growing business. This move in 1949 saw the funeral home locate to 356 Rubidge Street, the present location we operate out of today. Aaron's 3 sons, William, John, and Manson, eventually joined their father in the business, with Max joining the firm in 1933 after the death of his father, William. Eventually, Max obtained sole ownership of the funeral home and operated it up until 1982, when it was sold to 2 longtime employees, Jim Hodston and Donald Marr. Don Marr later retired, and Jim sold the funeral home to the Lowen Group in the fall of 1987. However, Max Comstock, who is now in his 80s, still has a keen interest in the operation of the funeral home, and usually stops in every Monday following his weekly Rotary meeting to make sure that everything is running smoothly. And Richard, I'm sure he'll want to sit down and have a chat with you and let him know how important that business still is to him, even though he doesn't have any ownership in it at the present time, as I'm sure Greg can verify and Harry before him. To give you an idea of the area we operate within, Peterborough has a population of approximately 70,000 people. We're mainly a retirement town, however we do cover a large surrounding area made up of smaller communities. There are 4 funeral homes in the city and 2 transfer services operating at the present. And we're proud to serve on an average of 425 families per year, which translates into a market share of 45 to 48%. We have always maintained a predominantly Protestant clientele, but in turn have served the majority of the ethnic areas in our community. Although the Comstock tradition has established this business in Peterborough, it in no way maintains it or causes it to increase as we have seen over the last 10 years. This is accomplished by the hard work and dedication of the people that came with me tonight. Comstock Funeral Home has always been more than just a workplace. For those of us that are there, it's more of a second family. It is the dedication and respect for this profession that is shown every day, and more importantly, how it is portrayed to the families we serve, that has noticeably set us apart from our competition and made Comstock Funeral Home a great success. Thank you.
I can't read it, but I can read my own writing. I'll try to keep it short. Our chapel was founded in 1978 by the Martino family and opened to the public on December the 16th, 1979 as our Martino Funeral Home. The business per se was sold to the Lowen Group and given part of the Lowen family since July of 1987. When the family decided to get back into the business back in 1992, that is when we changed our name to the Giffen and Max Scarba Chapel. Part of it was to actually capitalize on the fine name of the Danforth Chapel, which had been established well after the war. And as Scarborough was growing, so many of the actual Scarborough families were served by the Danforth. Our business was renovated in July of 1997. As the business grew, we added a reception center upstairs, an extra visitation room, and everything else. Basically, I started this project with Ron Collins, and unfortunately Ron left before the project was completed, and I don't think you've ever seen it, Ron, have you?
I've never seen it, Brad.
Well, please, your corporate office, Bravo, devil.
Thank you, Brad.
You were the one who encouraged me to go for it. Anyway, on average, we survey about 325 families per year. The actual Scarborough area we serve is basically very, very multicultural. We serve families of, all faiths, all types, basically. I have been associated with the chapel since 1982, and I would think over the years that the actual greatest strength of the chapel has always been, and always probably will be, the people, basically. That's it. Thank you.
My name is Mark Clifton, and I work at the Funeral Home, North Toronto Chapel. The funeral home. Sorry. A natural. Troll Funeral Home. Troll Funeral Home was built by our founder, Lauren W. Troll, in 1938. And Lauren W. Troll built Troll Funeral Home as an expansion to his existing business, which is located downtown Toronto. Lauren decided to build a funeral home in the suburbs of Toronto, and at that time Toronto was much different than you can well imagine now. North Toronto was almost a country funeral home. But the community quickly grew, and so did the business. And it grew so much that in 1956, Troll Funeral Home had to build an expansion onto the business as we were privileged to serve more and more families. In 1978, a local business that competed with Troll Funeral Home closed its doors, and the Racco Funeral Home amalgamated with the Troll Funeral Home, and we've enjoyed success with that immersion ever since. In 1987, Troll Funeral Home was privileged to become part of the Lowen Group, and we've been enjoying the benefits of that ever since. Now, in 2001,